The day the old commander's grandson was taken in the middle of the street by human traffickers was the same day my husband Mark, the company commander on duty, was far too occupied making herbal medicine for his cousin Clara to notice. He didn't dispatch anyone to search for the boy. I was the one who threw myself at the kidnappers, grabbing onto their arms with all my strength. I received several knife wounds for my efforts, feeling the sharp sting as my flesh was torn open and blood began to soak through my clothes. In my previous life, I had panicked in that moment and screamed for Mark. He had reluctantly turned around and managed to get the child back. Because of that heroic act, the old commander, who was the highest authority in the region, was immensely grateful. But Clara died that same day from a high fever, a tragedy Mark would never let me forget. He had gently comforted me at the time, telling me it was all over, but his comfort was a lie. On the day I gave birth to our child, he used some flimsy excuse to lock me in a room and stabbed me 20 times. I lay on the floor, watching my life bleed out of me, unable to move or even speak. In my final moments, I saw the twisted and vicious expression on his face. "If you hadn't staged that fake kidnapping," he sneered, "how would Clara have died? It was your jealousy that killed her. Do you have any idea the kind of pain she was in when she died? And now she's gone and she was carrying my baby. Both of their lives were lost because of you. You deserve to feel what she felt. You and that bastard child of yours can rot in hell." Then I opened my eyes. I was back on the very day the old commander's grandson was kidnapped. A metallic taste filled my mouth as blood dripped from my lip and splattered onto a pair of worn cloth shoes. My neck was being squeezed tightly, and as I looked around the filthy, messy room, I realized I had been reborn. I had returned to the very day I had once chosen to die 3 years ago. I yanked my hand free and tried to slap away the man's grip, but I was too weak to have any effect on him. It was Vince, the trafficker. Seeing me struggle, he grabbed a handful of my hair and slammed my head against the ground several times, his face dark with anger. "Why did you have to interfere with my business?" he growled. "Couldn't you just be a good little teacher and mind your own business? Your worthless life ends here." Just then, footsteps sounded behind him, and Vince's cousin Rick walked in with a disgusting grin on his face. "She's going to die anyway," Rick said. "Might as well let me have some fun with her first. I've never been with a commander's woman." Vince frowned, clearly annoyed. "You pig-brained idiot," he muttered. But Rick kept begging until Vince finally gave in. "Fine, but be quick about it. Then get out and stand watch." Rick rubbed his hands together eagerly and threw himself on top of me. His face was greasy and covered in moles, and the smell coming from him was enough to make me gag. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I forced a shaky smile. Can we not do this in front of the child? Maybe we could go somewhere else." Next to us, little Leo Pierce, the old commander's grandson, was tied up tightly, his small body trembling with fear. "What a pain," Rick muttered, but he rolled his eyes and dragged me into the pitch-black room next door. It was in that moment that a skill I had learned while living with Mark finally became useful: the trick to quickly untying rope knots. The moment Rick turned his back, I freed my hands, grabbed a heavy wooden stick from the floor, and smashed it over his head. He cursed in pain before collapsing, unconscious. In my previous life, I had used that chance to run, but I was so worried that Mark might get into trouble at work that I begged a stranger to go find him and bring him back. I never could have imagined that my decision would lead to Clara's death, and that Mark, so cruel and heartless, would take all the credit for the rescue while secretly blaming me for everything. In the end, he ensured that both my child and I died without a trace. This time, I wouldn't let history repeat itself. No matter how dangerous it was, I was going to save Leo with my own hands. My heart pounded in my chest. Rick's scream had already made Vince suspicious. Gripping the stick tightly, I crept behind the door. The moment I saw his back, I didn't hesitate. I swung the stick down with all my might. Vince spun around in a rage, easily snatching the stick from my hands and slapping me hard across the face, again and again. Blood streamed down my cheeks and onto my clothes, and my body collapsed onto the ground. I watched, dazed, as he turned toward Leo, picked him up, and prepared to leave. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I staggered to my feet and lunged forward, grabbing his wrist. "Let him go," I demanded. Vince's fury was absolute. He kicked me hard in the stomach. My entire body seized with pain, and I curled into a ball, enduring his relentless kicks and punches. Blood bubbled from my lips as I coughed, my face throbbing and swollen from the blows. With a sneer, he spit on me and turned to leave. Watching his retreating back, I forced myself up through the agony, picked up the stick one more time, and used the last ounce of my strength to strike him over the head. That was the final straw. Vince pulled a knife from his pocket and stabbed it directly into my stomach. "You want to die? Fine, I'll send you there myself," he snarled, stabbing me repeatedly in my arms and thighs. Deep gashes opened up on my body and blood poured freely. My mind spun into chaos and I was barely conscious, but I clung to his leg, repeating over and over, "The boy is here. Leo's here." Just as the sound of shouting filled the room, my strength finally gave out and everything went dark. In the darkness, I saw Mark again. I saw his cold face as he locked me in that woodshed and the sharp knife in his hand as he drove it into my stomach without hesitation. "If you hadn't staged that fake kidnapping," he had said, his voice dripping with venom, "how would Clara have died? It was your damned jealousy that killed her. Do you have any idea how much pain she was in when she died? And she was pregnant. Both her and the baby died because of you. You should know exactly how much she suffered. You and that bastard child of yours can spend eternity repenting in hell." A tide of crimson red overwhelmed me. I watched, helpless, as my newborn baby stopped breathing. "No!" I screamed, a cry that tore from the depths of my soul, and I woke up gasping, my heart racing. The hospital room door slammed open and little Leo ran in, throwing himself into my arms. "Miss Hayes, you're finally awake!" he sobbed, his face a mess of tears and mucus, his eyes full of worry. Behind him stood the old commander, General Pierce. He looked at me sharply, his presence dignified and commanding. His narrow eyes held a cold glint of suspicion. "Miss Hayes," he said in a low voice, "thank you for your timely reaction." His tone made it clear he didn't fully believe it was a coincidence. After all, it was highly improbable that I would just happen to encounter traffickers, get dragged onto the same vehicle, and then risk my life to save his grandson. In my previous life, the general had conducted a full investigation before awarding Mark a medal for his heroism, an honor that launched Mark's military career to new heights. A knock came at the door, a soldier entered, saluted, and handed a few papers to the general, speaking quietly. As he read the report, the imposing pressure in the room gradually eased. I knew what those papers contained, my background check and a full account of what had happened. "If you ever need anything," the general said, his voice softer now, "don't hesitate to ask me. I can also help with Mark's situation." Today's events were a major incident. As the company commander on duty, Mark had left his post without permission. There was no doubt he would lose the job he was so proud of. Hearing the general's offer, I understood he was giving Mark a way out. I shook my head. "Leo is my student," I said firmly. "Protecting him was the right thing to do. I had no other motives." The general's eyes lit up with appreciation, and even his stern face softened with a hint of a smile. Suddenly, a stabbing pain shot through my body, and I cried out as the white bandages around my wounds turned crimson again. By the time the doctor came to change my dressings, my forehead was soaked with cold sweat. The general called over a guard. "Go get Mark. It's late, his wife is missing, and he's not even looking for her." He slammed a porcelain teacup down on the table. "Useless," he roared. I hurriedly tried to stop him, forcing myself to sit up. "Don't—" But before I could finish, the door burst open. There stood Mark, and behind him, my cousin Clara. They must have just passed the general's group on their way out. Mark studied their retreating backs, a puzzled look on his face. "Anna, are you okay?" Clara said, rushing to my side. "It's all my fault. I just had a little cold, otherwise Mark would have saved you right away." Her face was pale and her eyes were red. She hugged me tightly, but in doing so, she pressed directly on one of my fresh wounds. I screamed from the pain and shoved her away. "Sis, it's okay if you blame me," she murmured, then cast a scornful glance at Mark. She ran back to him and said in a sickly sweet tone, It's not your fault. Don't be upset. I'll apologize for making her mad. Then she turned back to me. Come on, sis. You're the older one. You should let her have her way. The familiarity of that phrase made me scoff. Because I was her older cousin, I had been forced to endure countless injustices. Anything she liked, I had to give up without question. After my parents died in a mining accident, my uncle's family took me in. I learned very quickly that to survive in that house, I had to keep Clara happy. Otherwise, all that awaited me were harsh insults and beatings. Even my marriage to Mark only happened because Clara thought his family background was beneath her. It was a favor, something she didn't want, so she tossed him to me. But once Mark became a company commander, everything changed. In my past life, the two of them had been involved long before I discovered it. Clara would mock me openly and act as if I was pitiful, and with Mark constantly telling me I was overthinking things, I actually started to believe I was the one who was too petty and suspicious. I gave her whatever she wanted, convinced I owed it to her. The truth was, they had developed feelings for each other long ago, and he had always cared more for her than he ever did for me. I didn't even look at him now, I just spoke coldly. I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I be the one to apologize? If you feel so bad for her, then you do it. My blunt words seemed to stun Mark. He frowned. What are you talking about? This whole thing was your fault. If you hadn't chased after them and caused such a scene, I could have snuck out for a bit and no one would have known. Do you have any idea what your recklessness has cost me? Now I have to write 1,000-word self-criticism and my job is probably gone. I don't understand what kind of enemy you made to bring this on yourself. So, his superior hadn't told him the truth. He still didn't know the child involved was the general's grandson. Since no one else had bothered to inform him, I saw no reason why I should. I'm a teacher, I said flatly. Protecting my student is my responsibility. You're the one who abandoned your post. Don't try to blame me for your actions. Hearing that, Mark's face darkened. Clara was sick. She was in pain, and you weren't there for her. If I hadn't noticed something was wrong, she could have passed out. Do you even realize that? It was always like this. Every time my relationship with Mark showed signs of improving, Clara would suddenly come down with some mysterious illness. I didn't know if Mark was just oblivious or if he genuinely cared that much, but he never seemed to find it strange. My wounds began to throb again, and I didn't want to argue anymore. I closed my eyes, hoping to rest, but Clara had no intention of letting me off the hook. Sis, she said sweetly, why don't you go home now? It's hard for Mark to keep running back and forth, and besides, your injuries aren't that serious. You can rest just as well at home. When I didn't answer, she pressed down hard on my leg, the one that was in a cast. Money doesn't come easily for him, you know. You shouldn't let him waste it here. Be considerate. Don't make things harder for him. Even I can see how much he's struggling. As she spoke, she started packing my things without asking. Mark didn't even glance at me. I stared coldly at the scene before me. Mark, my leg is broken. I have wounds all over my body. How am I supposed to go home like this? Are you really going to let Clara act this way? My firm tone made him avert his eyes in guilt, but only for a moment. She's right, he said shortly. You'll be fine at home. I'll go talk to the doctor and get your discharge papers. Once you're home, Clara and I will take good care of you. Before I could stop him, he left the room without a second thought. This was the man I had loved for years. As long as Clara was the one speaking, he would obey without question, no matter how unreasonable her words were. Now it was just the two of us left in the room. She stared at me with a face full of malice, her eyes narrow and cold. Anna Hayes, she said through clenched teeth. Why couldn't you have just died? 6 months ago, Clara had found a way to move into the house I shared with Mark. She had become more and more aggressive since then, constantly causing trouble and driving a wedge between us. At first, Mark had his doubts, but over time he grew to trust her completely and became increasingly impatient with me. Watching them being so openly affectionate, I had once asked Mark, "Don't you think your relationship with Clara is a bit too close? You two act more like a married couple than cousins." His face had twisted in outrage. "How dare you talk about your cousin like that? You've always been jealous of her, of how good she is, how beautiful she is. Her parents treated you like their own daughter, and this is how you repay them. With filthy thoughts about Clara? Don't ever say that again, or I swear I won't forgive you. I had apologized, sobbing until my face was soaked, terrified that everyone would turn against me. But the truth was, none of them had ever genuinely cared about me. They were just waiting for the chance to crush me. I decided then to end my marriage with Mark on my own terms and let him have Clara. Mark had already completed my discharge procedures. He was just about to lift me up when Clara interrupted, saying she felt dizzy. Without a moment's hesitation, he scooped her up into his arms and rushed out of the hospital full of concern. As he walked, he kept looking back, urging me to hurry up. I dragged my broken legs across the floor, biting my lip to keep from making a sound, and limped all the way to the car. I opened the back door and collapsed into the seat, exhausted. "Are you still hurting? Maybe I should call a doctor to check on you," Clara said sweetly. Mark, looking uneasy, furrowed his brows but said nothing. As soon as we arrived home, he carried Clara straight into our bedroom. Only when he saw me struggling in behind them, limping heavily, did he glance awkwardly away. "Cousin, don't misunderstand," Clara said in her usual delicate tone. "I just feel really unwell. Could you make me some porridge? If you're tired, feel free to sleep in my room." Meanwhile, Mark had already gone out to find a doctor, as if afraid something might happen to someone who wasn't even sick. I said nothing. I walked past them, straight to the nightstand, knelt down, and reached for the small jade pendant my mother had left for me. If it wasn't for that single piece of her love, I wouldn't have come back to this house at all, but the black box was empty. The jade was gone. "Clara," I said, staring at her with a cold, hollow gaze. "Where is my pendant?" My voice had hardened, stripped of all patience. Clara still pretended to be clueless. "I don't know what you're talking about. If you can't keep track of your own things, that's not my problem." "What am I? Your servant?" Tears slid silently down my face. My eyes were bloodshot, and my voice trembled with a hopelessness that was crushing me. I stared at her as I walked closer. "Give it back. That was my mother's. I don't care which one of you took it, but it must be returned." Clara shot up from the bed, her eyes filled with rage. She stood before me, arrogant and unrepentant. "So what if I took it? I threw it into the river. You'll never see it again, not in this life or the next." In that instant, my strength crumbled. All the humiliation I had endured surged at once. My nose stung, and hot tears streamed down my cheeks. Seeing me like this only made her more smug. She raised the empty wooden box and slammed it into my head. Warm blood soaked into my clothes as she kicked my already injured body over and over. When she heard Mark's footsteps approaching, she pretended to fall to the ground with a cry. The door flew open. Mark walked in to find Clara clutching her face, crying pitifully. Without asking a single question, he rushed to her, cradled her in his arms, and then turned to shove me violently to the floor. The impact made my skin sting, and my wounds tore open again as warm blood seeped from my arms and legs. "Mark," I said quietly but clearly, "let's get a divorce." Clara rolled her eyes and let out a cold snort. "Fine, you want a divorce? Then hand over every paycheck Mark has ever earned for the past few years and pay for emotional damages too. Everything in this house was bought by him. If you want to leave, you're not taking a single cent." As she spoke, she stepped on my hand and ground her heel down cruelly. My flesh twisted under the pressure, and I trembled uncontrollably from the pain. Just when I thought I couldn't endure another moment, voices erupted from outside the door. I forced my heavy eyelids open and saw General Pierce storming into the house, his face livid. Behind him was Mark's direct superior. "You two are really something," the general snapped. "Get your damn hands off her." Mark's eyes went wide the moment he saw the general. His face went pale. "Sir, what are you doing here?" I took the day off," he stammered, his voice shrinking. General Pierce's eyes locked onto my bloodied body, and he rushed over to lift me up, his face filled with concern. "Mark did this, didn't he?" he asked, his voice sharp. "I want to see what gives him the right to lay a hand on you." Clara stood up from the floor, wincing, and glared at the general. "So you're the guy my cousin brought here?" she sneered. Do you even know that Mark is a company commander? No matter who you are, you should show him some respect. Who are you to criticize him? The general's expression had turned so dark it looked like a storm cloud. Mark, he said, his voice sharp and cold. You abandoned your post. If it weren't for Anna, you'd be dead right now. And you still dared to lay a hand on her? This woman saved my grandson's life, and this is how you and your little mistress treat her. He let out a low, furious snort. But Clara, completely unaware of the gravity of the situation, kept spewing nonsense. You, some random guy off the street you think you can boss my Mark around? Are you tired of living? Or are you saying my cousin is sleeping around and brought her new man home? She was just talking about divorce a minute ago. Mark turned to me with a look of stunned disbelief, as if he had just realized I was the kind of woman Clara was describing. Anna, he said, his voice laced with hurt. You're involved with someone else after everything I've done for you. How could you do this to me? His righteous indignation was laughable. I couldn't stop the cold smile from forming on my lips. He had been obsessed with Clara for who knows how long, and now he had the audacity to accuse me. It was pathetic. General Pierce's eyes turned icy, his tone like a blade. Do any of you even know what you're saying? Strip him of his rank. Having a parasite like this in the army is a disgrace. Mark's commanding officer stood to the side, nervously wiping sweat from his brow. Yes, sir, he stammered. Even now, Claire refused to believe it. She glared at me, then scoffed. Wow, you really went all in with this act. But honestly, cousin, your taste is awful. You went for someone that old? He's practically the same age as Grandpa. He probably smells like an old man. And judging by his clothes, he doesn't have any money either. She stepped back, pinching her nose in disgust. You must have spent all of Mark's money on him, huh? No wonder we're broke. Her contemptuous eyes drifted toward General Pierce. He chuckled coldly and began to clap, slow and sarcastic. Bravo, really, bravo. To think I need to prove who I am to someone like her. He turned to the room. Can someone here, anyone, please do me the favor of telling her who I actually am? He didn't wait for a reply. You think I haven't done my job as a leader? Fine. I'll go home and throw Mark out myself. The general walked straight over to Mark and grabbed his officer's badge. Mark, he barked. This woman, your wife, saved my grandson. You're fired. The moment the truth was laid bare, Mark froze, dazed and disoriented, as if the ground had dropped out from under him. His knees wobbled as he struggled to stand. No, sir, please, I was just joking with my wife. I didn't hit her, I swear. His face had gone ghostly pale. He tried to take a step toward General Pierce, but the guards blocked him. Clara rushed to hold him up, her expression visibly shaken. Mark, he's really the general. How can this be? Anna saved his grandson. The confirmation hit her like a slap. She collapsed onto the floor, stunned, her eyes locked on me in disbelief and frustration. Mark, no longer able to defend himself, turned back to me. He tried to take my hand, but I stepped away. Please, Anna, just say a few good words for me. We're married. You can't just stand there and let this happen to me. Seeing him beg like that, clutching so desperately to his pride, I let out a bitter, mocking smile. Mark, I said calmly and clearly, let's get divorced. You've always liked Clara the most, haven't you? I'll step aside. I'll let you have each other. Clara lowered her head, a smug little smile playing on her lips. But Mark panicked. He reached out and grabbed my hand. No, Anna, I haven't. You're my wife. She's just your cousin. I only took care of her because of you, he said, tears brimming in his eyes as he looked at me with supposed affection. But having lived through this life twice, I knew better. Mark was a master actor, and even now, he was pretending he couldn't live without me. I didn't want to waste another word on him. I just wanted to get the divorce certificate and end everything between us. When the guards helped me into the car, Mark was still shakily trailing behind. He reached out as if to touch me, but then hesitated, realizing he no longer had the right. All he could do was watch, blank-faced, as I was taken away. General Pierce personally brought me back to the hospital. The doctors hurried to stitch and clean my wounds before moving me to a patient room. Afraid that Mark might try to cause more trouble, the general stationed 2 guards outside my door. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. Meals were delivered 3 times a day, and exhausted from everything that had happened, I fell into a restless sleep almost immediately. When I woke again, I saw little Leo asleep with his head resting on the edge of my bed. In my past life, I had been pregnant with a gentle baby boy. He had never caused me much discomfort, and even his kicks were soft. Sadly, he never got the chance to see the world. A wave of grief washed over me as I stared at Leo. I reached for the blanket to cover him, but the movement stirred him. "Miss Hayes, you're finally awake," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Do you want some soup? I brought some for you." Before I could answer, he had opened an insulated container and carefully poured the soup into a bowl, handing it to me with both hands. It reminded me of his first day in my class. His caretaker had told me he lost his mother when he was young, and that he was quiet and stubborn. But in the past few days, I had come to know the real Leo, a sweet and thoughtful child. After I finished eating, he picked up a book and asked to read to me. "Miss Hayes," he said softly, "can I lean against you while I read?" His eyes sparkled with a nervous hope. My heart softened, and I opened my arms. In the quiet hospital room, his small voice filled the space. Eventually, he drifted off to sleep again, nestled against me. Just then, the door creaked open, and a tall, unfamiliar man stepped inside. He walked over and stared directly at Leo. A sudden wave of panic surged through me. I immediately pulled Leo into my arms, shielding him. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice wary. The man gave a slight nod. "Leo told me what happened. Thank you for risking your life to save him. I'm his father, David Pierce." Hearing that, I finally relaxed, though the adrenaline still lingered. We looked at each other in silence for a moment. Then, loud shouting erupted from the hallway. Even without seeing him, I recognized Mark's voice. He wasn't allowed in, but his yelling grew more desperate. "Anna, come out. I know I was wrong. Please come home with me. I promise I'll treat you better." My brow furrowed, and I was about to get out of bed when David gently placed a hand on my wrist. "Let me handle this," he said, his voice low but firm. "You need to rest." Something about his calm presence put me at ease. He strode to the door and stepped outside. I didn't hear what he said, but when he came back, the hallway was completely silent. In the following days, without Mark's interruptions, my time in the hospital became peaceful. Every evening after school, Leo would visit, always bringing books or little handmade toys. The only thing that unsettled me was David Pierce. He was there every day too, a calm, serious presence watching over us. Every time I looked at his composed, stern face, I never knew what to say. "Miss Hayes, look, I made a red dragonfly for you," Leo said one afternoon, carefully holding out a paper creation. But as he approached, he stumbled, and the delicate toy fell, its wings snapping. I quickly crouched down to pick up the pieces. "I didn't mean to," he said, his small face filled with disappointment. Just then, David quietly stepped up behind me. With long, deft fingers, he took the broken toy and pieced it back together with ease. "There," he said softly, placing the restored dragonfly in my hand. Leo's eyes lit up. Then he blinked and blurted out, "Miss Hayes, isn't it cold today? Why is your face so red?" I could feel the heat in my own ears. "Stop saying nonsense," David said, scooping Leo into his arms with a tender smile. "Did you finish your homework?" The room filled with their laughter, a sound that brought a sense of warmth and peace. The next morning, I was told I could be discharged. My wounds had mostly healed. David helped me pack and handled the paperwork. "Would you like to come stay with us at the Pierce house?" he asked. "Don't get me wrong," he added quickly. "I just meant after what happened, it might be safer." I declined his offer. "It's in the past. There's no need." After saying goodbye, I took a 3-wheeled cart back to my childhood home, the house my parents had left me. It had been unoccupied for years and everything was coated in dust. I spent the entire day cleaning. As soon as I finished making dinner, I heard footsteps outside. "Who's there?" I called out nervously. I grabbed a stick and approached the door cautiously. Just as it opened, I swung the stick down, but a firm hand caught it. It was David. "You scared me," I said, my heart pounding. He noticed my shaken expression. He said nothing at first, just handed me a box of mung bean pastries, his eyes filled with a slightly awkward concern. I I just thought you might be uncomfortable here alone, so I came to check on you." I peeked behind him. He chuckled. Leo wanted to come, but I told him he had to finish his homework first. He held out the pastries again. "I just made them. They should still be warm." I took a piece and tasted it. "It's really good," I said sincerely. Then he glanced at the bowl of noodles I had made for dinner. The noodles were overcooked and sitting in a dark, watery broth. It looked barely edible. I was too embarrassed to speak. He let out a soft laugh, dumped the noodles in the trash, and quickly cooked a fresh bowl, adding a fried egg and simple seasoning. It smelled wonderful. "You're amazing," I said, admiring his skill. After I ate, he washed the dishes and put everything away. As he headed for the door, I called out, "Wait!" I rushed to my room and came back with a hand-knit scarf I had just finished. I wrapped it gently around his neck. "It's new," I explained. That night, I watched his figure fade into the darkness, and, for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept peacefully. I was woken the next morning by noise outside. I looked up and was stunned to see Mark. He was unkempt, his face hollow, and his eyes sunken. He looked like he had been worn down by life. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up. "Anna, you're finally awake. I didn't want to disturb you, so I didn't knock. Are you hungry? I made you porridge." He gave me a hopeful look as he set the food in my hands. I said nothing, just watched him rub his hands nervously. When I was done, I looked at him. "Mark, there's no need for this. We agreed to get divorced. It's over." My bluntness seemed to shock him. "I didn't do anything wrong," he said quickly. "I only treated her well because she's your cousin, that's all. I know I messed up. Please forgive me. Come back with me. Didn't you say you wanted a child? Let's start trying as soon as we get home." He stepped forward to grab my hand. I had mentioned wanting a child so many times during our marriage, but he had always brushed me off with excuses about work and money. Hearing him use it as a bargaining chip now, I pushed him away, my voice cold. "Mark, I have nothing left to say to you. Let's go get the divorce today. Since you're not working anymore, you're free." Panic washed over his face. "Anna, please don't do this. I'll do whatever you say, anything. Just don't leave me." I laughed bitterly. "You really think I didn't see what was going on between you and Clara? Stop lying to yourself. We're getting a divorce. Let's end this on decent terms." At that, his face went ashen, the light in his eyes dimming. "Even if I admit I was wrong, that's still not enough for you." I didn't flinch. "Pick a day. Today or tomorrow. Let's end this." With that, I turned and walked away. A few moments later, I heard his low voice outside the door. "Okay, Anna, let's go now." When we went to get our identification documents, we ran into Clara and my Aunt Helen. My aunt stormed up to me, jabbing a finger at my nose. "Anna, you go file for that divorce right now. Clara's pregnant. That baby is Mark's. You have to give him up." Clara blushed, turning to Mark with sweet, brimming eyes. "Mark, you're going to be a dad. It's our baby." Mark's face turned completely pale as he looked at me. "Anna, it's not what you think. I was drunk. It was a mistake," he stammered, but I remained silent and indifferent. My aunt scoffed at me. "Don't even try to pull anything. He was never going to be yours. From now on, Clara runs this house. You should have known your place." She twisted the truth, claiming I had bullied Clara for years. "What a good daughter you've raised," I said sarcastically. "Poor Clara, bullied by me since we were kids. And you, her mother? What kind of parenting is that?" As Mark stood there dumbfounded, I added, "Also, you have one thing wrong. I'm the one who wants the divorce. This is my decision." My cold smile finally set off my aunt's rage. She cursed and raised her hand to slap me, but I caught her wrist and pushed her away. "Don't try the same tricks you used on me as a child. They won't work anymore." The fierceness in my eyes made her falter. At the civil office, the staff looked up in surprise at our chaotic group. What really shocked them was that immediately after Mark and I finalized our divorce, he and Clara went to apply for a marriage license. "You're getting married now?" the clerk asked loudly. A crowd gathered, whispering among themselves. "I've lived a long time, but I've never seen anything like this," one person said. "Divorced one second, marrying someone else the next. What kind of woman has no shame?" Each word was a slap to Clara's face. Her head sank lower. My aunt pulled her close, glaring at the crowd. "Shut your mouths! This is none of your business!" Just then, a group of soldiers, Mark's former comrades, stepped forward and addressed Clara directly. "Clara, you need to come with us. According to the trafficker's testimony, you were involved in multiple kidnapping cases." Clara's whole body trembled. I didn't do anything," she stammered, turning to Mark. "Mark, please help me. I swear I didn't do it. Mom, help me." When she looked at me, her gaze was filled with venom. "Someone help me," she cried. "It was Anna. She framed me. She's jealous and made all this up." Mark stood there hesitant as she was escorted away by the officers. My aunt followed, crying hysterically, and was eventually taken away as well for obstructing their duty. The sudden chaos left me silent. In my previous life, none of this had ever happened, but now it all made sense. The fancy clothes she wore, the money she always had despite not having a job. With the divorce papers in my hand, I turned to leave. This was no longer my concern. Mark stopped me just outside. His voice was low. I didn't know. I didn't know she'd done all that. Maybe he really didn't know, or maybe it was all an act. It didn't matter anymore. When I got home, the chimney was already puffing smoke. As I reached the doorway, Leo's small figure ran into my arms. "Miss Hayes, you're back. Dad and I waited so long for you." David stood at the stove, a spatula in his hand, a warm flush on his face. A mischievous urge rose in me. I walked over to him. "Captain Pierce, are you stir-frying air? I don't see anything in the wok." Ethan giggled, covering his mouth. The three of us sat down and ate together, the room filled with a warmth I hadn't felt in a very long time. After dinner, Leo and I played hopscotch outside while David quietly handled the housework. When I sat down to rest, he came out with a glass of warm water. "Anna," he said gently, "have you thought about being with me? I promise I'll treat you well. These past few days, I think you've probably seen it for yourself. I like you." His heart was pounding so loudly I could almost hear it, his voice trembling despite his calm expression. Just as he was starting to look discouraged, I reached out and took his hand. "Yes." From a short distance away, Leo came bouncing over, cheering, completely unaware of what had just happened, but his joy made the moment feel even more right. Months passed. Life at home with Leo and David became peaceful and simple, full of a quiet warmth that slowly healed the broken parts of me. As for Clara, the truth of her crimes unraveled quickly. With solid evidence and testimony from multiple victims, she was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Ryan lost everything. Further investigations tied him to knowingly helping Clara, and he was charged as an accessory. He received a lighter sentence of 3 years with probation, enough to destroy the pride he once wore like armor. He wrote me letters full of apologies and promises. I never responded. One afternoon, I found my divorce certificate in a drawer. I held it for a long time, then tucked it away. Not with sorrow, but with a sense of closure. That night, as I stood under the stars, watching David and Leo chase each other with a flashlight, their laughter echoing in the dark, I realized that some stories have to end in pain so that better ones can begin, and mine finally had.